Go ahead, Lara.
Okay, so it's Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this day. Please be with all those who are sick and traveling. Please be with Carl and the struggles he's going through, and please be with Everett Poteet and what he's going through. Please be with the ladies who will be studying today. Thank you for their safe travels here. Please give them safe travels on their way back to their homes. Please help us to be pleasing in your sight as we study your word. In your son's name that I pray. Amen.
All right, so we are going to be talking about the book of Ecclesiastes. It's a hard one. Okay, so we are on page 108. So we are chapter 8, question, depending on if you are in the book, it's question 4E. But if you have the print out, it was question 5E. There was a typo. And when I wrote mine down, it actually, okay, it's broken down. I'm on D and this is E over here. So she breaks it down differently than I did. So, okay, it says, so we were talking about Solomon, all of his riches, all of his wealth. And the question was, did having all these possessions make him a better person? And then we reviewed Deuteronomy 17 to see the list of commands that were broken in the accumulation of the wealth. Then it says, then read the entire book of Ecclesiastes, in which the philosophies of materialist, nothing is valuable since our common end is death, are set forth. Highlight the verses in the book that refer to riches or wealth from the point of view of a fatalist. It says, look it up if you're not sure. Look also for the principle that wealth gained is never enough for the materialist or fatalist. Cite here. This was hard.
What this means.
This one, I struggled with this one. One, I struggled with the book of Ecclesiastes. And then this, so materialism is a theory of physical matter, a theory that physical matter is the only or fundamental reality, and that all being and processes, oh, hang on, here, a doctrine, let me go to this one, a doctrine that the only or the highest values or objectives lie in material well-being, in the furtherance of material progress. So basically, it's about stuff. You got to have stuff. This is the keeping up with the Joneses kind of idea, according to this. She says that the materialist is nothing is valuable since our common end is death. So I guess it depends on, I'm looking at Merriam-Webster. So
I think that's
one of the other things says a preoccupation with or stress upon material rather than intellectual or spiritual things.
That's what I thought the word meant.
Again, I think it depends on, one, what dictionary you're using, because different dictionaries will define things differently. Two, definitions change. We were just talking about this. Words change with the living language. So, you know, as the doctrine of materialism, is that all switches and changes? There's some of that. Now, the fatalist one, a doctrine that events are fixed in advance so that human beings are powerless to change them. That one, you know, it doesn't matter what I do. It does, you know, I can.
Never heard that word. Always thought that was premillennialism. That word.
Yeah. Well, okay, so
What would be the difference
Okay, so I think the difference being religion versus not. So predestination in terms of the premillennialism, that is, in terms of the Calvinistic teaching is, what's the actual, can't remember the phrase in the tulip. It doesn't matter. Something about election of the saints, yeah.
Everything's already
Well,
set.
we
Yeah.
had a lesson, Carrie, had a lesson about that, and I've heard that
Mhm.
teaching before,
Yes.
but I didn't know that was the same as this word here, fatalist.
Well, the fatalist, I think, comes from a secular perspective.
I've never heard of that word.
I couldn't either.
So think about, we're going to brush up on some ancient mythology here, some Greek mythology. The Fates, the three Fate sisters.
Oh, when they say, oh, it's fate?
Yes.
It's already determined. Okay.
Yes. So that's where we get the fatalists from. It's somebody else, it doesn't matter what I do. It doesn't, it doesn't matter how hard I work. I'll either get the raise or I won't, it doesn't matter. It doesn't, it doesn't matter if I take care of my body. It's already determined. I'm going to, and it's kind of a meshing of ideas, but it's, I have an expiration date basically. So it doesn't matter what I do with my body. I'll die when it's my time. That type of mentality is what fatalism is dealing with. So basically we're looking at the ideas in Ecclesiastes of money is important, material things are important, and it doesn't really matter what I do. It's all predetermined anyway. So that to me, it was hard. It was very hard for many reasons.
I don't see how any of that teaches fatalist. Now, materialistic, to me, he does teach that in Ecclesiastes. Because, things, are not important. That's what he's trying to tell us, Money and things and all that is not important, It's all vanity, But the fatalist part, I don't think Solomon is teaching that, y'all.
I thought that was her question. Maybe I didn't even get this one. I skipped it
Because you didn't get this one.
I can't do this right now.
Yeah.
I skipped it.
Yeah, think about this.
Jotted a couple of things.
But I can see in
I just
chapter,
wrote verses.
Okay, it's fine.
chapter 1, verse 2. Is that not what we're talking about? Vanity of vanities?
Yeah.
All is vanity.
But that's materialism, really, more than it is fatalism, isn't it?
Well, I mean, I
So
don't know. I didn't look up any of these words, so I don't know.
You're just confused.
the Hebrew, the footnote in this talks about the word for vanity. The word translated vanity or vain refers concretely to a mist, vapor, or mere breath. Metaphorically, it's something that is fleeting or elusive, with different nuances depending on the context. It appears 5 times in this verse and in 29 other verses in Ecclesiastes. So it's fleeting. It's when I think of, and I've been known to have words wrong, so I probably have this one wrong. But when I think of vanity, I think of like appearance. People, the appearance, focusing on the appearance. Vain, I think of a woman who's very vain about her looks. I was trying to tell somebody one time, I'm very self-conscious about my smile, about my teeth. I was bullied unmercifully in school because I had buck teeth and all that. And so I'm just so self-conscious about my smile and my mouth. And the lady said, "You're sure vain, aren't you?" And I was like, I'm like, not trying to be vain. I'm like, I just don't want to relive that experience ever again. But we think about worship being in vain, being useless. Jesus said, by teaching as commandments the traditions of men you make vain my worship, and I paraphrase that. So it's this idea that it's useless, it's worthless. And I think that's kind of what this is getting here, this fleeting, it's use, this, it's elusive, it's not really going to amount to anything. And again, this is those lost in translation. How do we put some of this together? So as I was looking at it, here's what I'm going to do on this one, because this one is just this one's a hard one. I'm just going to go through and tell you what I got. And if you guys got something else, give me something else. If you disagree with what I've got, great, let's disagree and talk about it, because this one's hard. This one's hard. So I start out with Ecclesiastes 1. I have verse 8. All things are full of weariness. A man cannot utter it. The eye is not satisfied with seeing it, nor the ear filled with hearing it. So to me, there was some materialism in that. I have verse 17. And I applied my heart to know wisdom and to know madness and folly. I perceived that this is also but a striving after wind. And then 18, for in much wisdom is much vexation, and he who increases knowledge increases sorrow. So for me, I saw some fatalist in there, this idea of increasing wisdom is increasing sorrow. It doesn't matter what I know. It doesn't matter what's going on. It doesn't change anything having this knowledge.
Is he talking about the secular knowledge? I mean, he was considered very smart, very wise, the wisest man that ever lived. Is that what he's talking about, or is he just talking about our study?
See, and this is where I struggle with Ecclesiastes, because obviously he's inspired by God, inspired by the Holy Spirit. This is God breathed, but I think some of this, there's a lot of overlapping of, I think it appeals to both the religious side of things, but also the secular side of things.
Did he write textbooks? Or?
It talks about he wrote books. Now, if you look in Proverbs, if you look at the book of Proverbs and you read through it, it is not one book. You can see where it's multiple books, or at least in the ESV, it shows you that this was a book, and then you have a new section, and this is a book.
I mean, not just what's in the Bible, but I thought he wrote science books.
I'm not sure.
Where'd I get that? I don't know where I got that.
I'm not.
We have the wisdom.
Yeah, I'm not saying you're wrong. I don't know.
But, why else would he want
The gardens
the
and
yes.
yes.
The apes and what was it from
Peacocks or baboons. The peacocks could be baboons too.
And he had
Yes,
he had all kinds of exotic animals, and I always saw it, but if you're looking at it from that perspective, I always saw it as he was just acquiring possessions. He was being flashy, showy, and not that didn't really come out quite the way I meant it to. It was just, as a king with lots of money, you would entertain people, and if you had these exotic allurements, it's just part of being royal. But if he was a scientist in that, and this is where I struggle with Solomon, because I totally know he was the wisest man. He had all this great wisdom given by God. The man also had 1,000 women in his household. That's stupid.
It's not very wise.
It is not, in many ways.
Well, and that was his downfall.
Yes. And just because you're wise doesn't mean you don't sin. Just because you're wise doesn't mean
you don't use that wisdom right.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you can, plenty of people know stuff. Think about the people who leave the church. They have the knowledge of becoming a Christian. They have the knowledge of, there's one guy who, look at Max Lucado, for example. I mean, Max Lucado was an amazing gospel preacher, had these great lessons, had all kinds of stuff. And now the man is, he's Baptist. He's all but Baptist. Yes. Yeah, you
He
can't.
has all these books out, you know, and people.
Yeah, I believe that.
And they are good, you know, some of them. But he just went off the deep end.
Yeah, he is, I won't, there, and I forget what the cutoff point is, but there comes a point where, and he denounces the Church of Christ. He says that the idea that baptism saves is ludicrous. Like yeah. So, I mean, this is somebody who was saved. This was somebody who had great knowledge. He wrote great study material, so he had, you know, he had wisdom in it. He clearly, well, and this, but so whereas Solomon had women, that was his downfall. I think Max Lucado's downfall is the money, like so many other people.
Popularity and money.
Yeah.
and time.
So
I
being
have chapter 1, 5 through 11.
5 through 11, yep, that whole section, the sun rises, goes down.
Almost the whole book is like that.
Yes.
I mean, it's just hard to pick out, you know.
I
That's
just
why
wrote
I
down
just
every
quit.
verse that's of vanity. Every verse that's of vanity, I wrote it down, and occasional
Yeah.
others that I thought might go in.
Let me, there's one here in particular for the fatalist that I actually wrote down fatalist. So it looks like chapter 4,
Chapter 4.
verses 13 through 16. Let's see if this can help.
And I got 4-8
I have 4:8 for materialist. Yes, yes.
for materialist.
You said what?
So 4:13 through 16.
16.
13, find 13, there.
I have 60.
Okay, hang on. Also, that everyone should eat, drink, and take pleasure in his toil. This is God's gift to man. I perceive that whatever God does endures forever. Nothing can be added to it, nor anything taken away from it. God has done it so that people fear before him. That which is already has been, that which is to be already has been, and God seeks what has been driven away. Moreover, I saw under the sun that in the place of justice, even there was wickedness, and in the place of righteousness, even there was wickedness. And so the idea being, even though, hey, Mom, are you in? That says, I said 4 here. That's what I said. I know I am not in 4.
No, where are you?
I was in 3,
But you were reading it right. I mean, according to what you were saying.
but I was wrong. Okay, so
Chapter 3.
chapter 4, we're on chapter 4. That's what I have here. I just looked at the wrong spot.
But what you read though made sense for the.
I included that, yes. So that was another one. So 3:18 through 21 is we're including this.
3:8.
But if I look at 4, if I look in the right spot here,
4:13.
we have 4:13 through 16. Better was a poor and wise youth than an old and foolish king who no longer knew how to take advice. For he went from prison to the throne, though in his own kingdom he had been born poor. I saw all the living who move about under the sun, along with that youth who was to stand in the king's place. There was no end of all the people, all of whom he led, yet those who come later will not rejoice in him. Surely this also is vanity and a striving after the wind. Here's what I wrote down. Even though the king had riches, he was foolish, and no one will rejoice in him afterwards. So his deeds are fleeting, a sense of why do it, fatalist. So that's, and again, I think part of it's going to depend. Now she's either King James or New King James. And of course, the way it reads, not that it's right or wrong either way, the tone in which, so that might be part of it. But for me, I could read the fatalist in there. It didn't really matter. No one was going to care about him afterwards. So that was one specific instance of fatalism that I had. Let's see here. I'm trying to find, because again, the materialism is easy. I'm trying to see what I had for fatalist here. Okay, chapter 7, verses 15 through 18. Hang on, sis. I'm looking, do you have yours broken down between materialist and fatalist?
No.
Okay, I'm looking very specifically for fatalist because of the conversation that Sharon was, talking about here. Okay, so let me see what ideas we can come up with. Okay, 7:15 through 18. Yes, I'm in 7. In my vain life, I have seen everything. There is a righteous man who perishes in his righteousness. There is a wicked man who prolongs his life in his evil doing. But be not overly righteous and do not make yourself too wise. Why should you destroy yourself? Be not overly wicked, neither be a fool. Why should you die before your time? Is it good that you should take hold of this and from that withhold not your hand? For the one who fears God has come out from both of them. And so I said, we all die. Sometimes our actions bring about our death, sometimes not. And I questioned, is this fatalist or not? So again, chapter 9, 2 through 3, I have down as a fatalist, where it talks about it is the same for all, since the same event happens to the righteous and the wicked, to the good and the evil, to the clean and the unclean, to him who sacrifices and to him who does not sacrifice. As the good one is, so is the sinner, and he who swears is as he who shuns an oath. So we die, the fatalist, it just doesn't matter. We all die. But on the other side, God judges us. And so we have to understand that we can't take that as a fatalist perspective, because there is something on the other side of that. Not that he necessarily addresses it there. But that's where I see a very clear fatalist text. If everybody dies, it doesn't matter what we do. Doesn't matter if we're good, doesn't matter if we're bad, we die. And then 11:8 was I have as a fatalist. So if a person lives many years, let him rejoice in them all, but let him remember that the days of darkness will be many. All that comes is vanity. So the fact, this days of darkness, I don't know, I'm thinking, we all grow old, things fade away. We have our golden years, our youth, our, whatever, it's all good. We rejoice in that. And then there comes a point where we're just kind of, and unless, for the most part, that's, how life works. You have this great uptick and everything, and then, things just fade off unless you die suddenly. Most people get to some point of incapacitation. So doesn't matter, we're all going to end up there. So does that make some sense? Okay.
I guess I was thinking more of, those all were good ones for the fatalist. I didn't have any hardly. But she said the verses that refer to riches are wealth from the fatalist point of view. So I thought she was talking about things.
And yeah, and
as far as a fatalist, but a lot of the stuff you read did include things. So I guess I just think the whole lesson here for us, is we're not to be materialistic, and we need to take the things that God gives us and make sure that we're getting them back and using them in the right way.
Yes.
But God gives us our wealth. We have jobs and earn it, but He gives us abilities to make
Yes.
Yes. And
Yes.
so it's not wrong to be wealthy.
No.
The wrong would come if you're not using that wealth in the right way. And that's what she's talking about through the whole lesson. But to me, digging in the Ecclesiastes, I was too lazy to do all that.
Well, it's a hard book. And again, I struggle because again, Solomon obviously was wise. He said very wise things. But again, he clearly, and the point of the book being is, as he starts out with, I did all these things. You know, I couldn't figure out the meaning of life, even though God, you know, gave me all of this great thing. I couldn't figure it out. So I did all of these stupid, ridiculous things, you know. I
think in a way he was repenting of all that he had messed up in his life after what God gave him. You know, how he misused,
That's what I would.
misused the wisdom, misused the wealth, you know, all those wives,
well,
you know.
and I absolutely agree with that. Like you can see the change in perspective. One of the things though that I really struggle with in repentance, because repentance requires change.
Yes.
And you think about the fact, you know, he built all those high places. He built all of the places to worship the false gods of his wives. He didn't do anything to destroy that. He left it all there. He, you know, and I'm like, no, if you were like, dude, if you were repenting, like if you,
Well, don't you think though, the way he words this book and like the last chapter and all that, that maybe he did, even though we don't know if he did or not, actually repent. We don't know.
correct. Correct. We don't know if he
But
repented.
this, especially this 12th chapter,
Yes.
and then the last 13, you know, the conclusion of the whole thing is
Yes.
fear God and keep his commandments.
Yes.
That's what we're here for.
Yes.
You know? So it sounds to me like he had a penitent heart. I don't know if he ever actually, you know.
Well, I agree. Yeah. Like we
You know.
just can't know. We can't know. I do know, again, what I do know is when you look through the history, the history books, he left the high places. He left the idol worship in place when he died. And I don't know if that was maybe out of fear, you know, if he gets rid of all these foreign wives' gods, or are their daddies going to come over here, or their brothers, as they're going to be, you know. So that's my thing. Again, clearly he gets the point. He gets the point. And he gives us the point. I just struggle because his actions for me, and there's the phrase, you know, actions speak louder than words. So that's.
But this action, to me, speaks a little penitent heart. But I don't know, you know.
I agree. You hear it there. So, and again, I have many more verses, but those aren't. So then it says, look at 1 Kings chapter 10 and list the riches of Solomon. That this is what is reinforced in Ecclesiastes 2 referenced. This is what is referenced in Ecclesiastes 2 as being vanity. Now, we had already looked at that at the beginning of this question when we started looking at Solomon. And his wealth was just,
Unbelievable.
it just like gold is dripping off the walls. It's like, that's just, you know, and silver is literally nothing. It's worth nothing because everything's gold. You know, he has gold cups and it's a lot. So with all that being in mind, then it said, then read and digest chapter 12 of Ecclesiastes. It's a whole new way of looking at life, altered by the fact that there's a creator, an eternal sustainer of life. Make notes here. So,
I put the 3 most important were 8, 13, and 14. That's just my opinion.
14, 8. Yeah. Yes. So everything's vanity. The end of the matter is, you know, fear God, keep his commandments, and then God's going to judge everything. Yes. I kind of had an overview of the chapter. I said, you know, 1 through 7 talks about being grounded in God. And so be prepared to endure when we are older and trouble comes. 11 through 12 focuses on words given by the shepherd. Study can be wearisome. And I think, and we can wear ourselves out within studying and not necessarily achieve anything by it. And then of course, in the end, the only thing that matters is that we fear and obey God because we will be judged.
The book is so depressing to read. To me, it's just kind of depressing, although we learn from it. But in chapter 5, I wrote this down, verse 19. I think this is something that we ought to never forget. Every man to whom God hath given riches and wealth, and we may not think we're rich, but we are.
Mm-hmm.
We've got so much more than if you take all the world. I get those things from all the missionaries, and those people are just sitting in old buildings and old chairs that are about to fall over. A lot of them on the floor, sitting on the floor. And I just think about how
And lucky
we're
to
so
have a
blessed. Yeah.
Some
Yeah,
people don't have
sometimes, yeah. But anyway, verse 19. And hath given him power to eat thereof and to take his portion and to rejoice in his labor. And this is a gift of God.
Mm-hmm.
That is a gift. What we have is a gift, And I don't know why Solomon seems like he just abused all that. But
women.
I think it's just something good to remember, that it's a gift. What we have is material-wise, well, and our blessings too, but I think this is talking more materialistic. They all came from God. It's, so that to me was a positive note thrown in with all the depressing.
Well, and you talk about the material things being a gift, and I agree, but I also see it as our ability to work is
That's
a gift.
That is a gift. That's what I said,
Yeah.
our abilities
Yes.
to earn that,
Yes.
and work and have our health, and all of that. So, but anyway.
The only verse I had wrote down for this whole lesson, I think, was chapter 2, verse 11.
I had that one.
Mhm.
Okay.
And then I looked on all the works that my hands had wrought, the labor that I had labored to do. Behold, all was vanity and vexation of spirit, and there was no profit under the sun. That vexation of spirit caught my attention.
What does yours say for that?
Or yours,
I've got King James.
yeah.
Vexation of spirit. It sounds like it's something that just bothering them.
Oh, hang on a second. Let me.
Vanity and vexation of spirit.
I thought that he was just wrought with maybe remorse that he had left.
That's
All of this, God gave him so much. He gave him the wisdom, but
so there was no profit. I mean, it's very depressing to me to read it.
I want to look at the Blue Letter Bible here. Come on, because I'm kind of having a hard time figuring. Mine reads a little differently, and I can't figure out the.
But right above that, look at verse 10. He said, whatever my eyes desired, I kept not from him. He just did everything he wanted to do. And withheld not my heart from any joy. He didn't use it right. He didn't use what God gave him right. Like God wanted him to. I'm sure God didn't want him to have 1,000 women.
Well, and this is one of the things one of the reason he had. Okay, so we wind up with all kinds of great blessings. And God told Solomon when he said, I want wisdom to guide your people. And God said, man, because you've asked for wisdom, I'm going to give you everything else. The thing is I think Solomon went about finding that in the wrong way. He didn't just let God bless him. He made all these political alliances, which is why he had all these wives. And he entered into, when we looked at the previous one to this, the idolatry that was this, they weren't supposed to go to Egypt and gather, they weren't supposed to be bartering dealing with Egypt, God said, I brought you out of this. You're not going back this way. And they said, watch me. And so Solomon did all these things that God said, I will bless you. But Solomon was like, well, you're going to bless me, God, but I want it on my terms, my conditions. I'll step in and make sure that I'm going to make sure you bless me.
Real hot, excuse me.
Go ahead.
I'm hot because I have long sleeves on, so.
Go ahead.
I'm
listening.
trying to,
Hot.
no, I'm trying to, my phone, my phone. So I shattered my phone. It's lovely. And it's not working very well. And I can't get the computer to pull up the Blue Letter Bible app. And
Her letter A is completely unfunctional.
I have to do a lot of voice to text at the moment because
And sometimes the voice to text won't even work.
it's fun times. It's okay. So chapter 2:11. Is that where we're at? Okay. Okay. Let me kind of see where we got here. Okay, it is. Whoops. Sorry. Because vanity and vexation. Okay, vexation of the spirit. Okay, so this is the way the ESV reads. It says a striving after wind. The spirit here, let's see which. Okay, so the spirit here is talking about wind, breath, mind, spirit. So when the ESV translated it, instead of a vexation of spirit, they did a striving after the wind. So, but this idea of you're trying to get a hold of something that you can't get a hold of. And so, I mean, vexation of spirit, the idea of being troubled about something that maybe you shouldn't be troubled about. I'm not sure. But so yeah, the ESV translates this one significantly different. And it's the Greek words play out both ways. I don't know which is a better translation.
No one.
Well, we can't.
Irritation or annoyance, the condition of being annoyed, troubling, grieving, distressing. That's
Yeah.
vexation. But yours.
Well, I can't get vexation to pull up to see what the Greek,
I don't know.
actually it's not Greek, it's Hebrew.
Yeah, it's Hebrew.
So like when you look at so depending on what you're looking at, sometimes, because obviously we have the Septuagint, so we have the Old Testament being in Greek.
Well,
but
the way he used it there, vanity and vexation of spirit, it just means you're troubled about it, your spirit is troubled. Something along that line.
see,
That's what I read into it, the way, in the whole chapter,
Yeah.
You can have all these things, you can have all of this, but you're not doing it right.
Yeah. Because he goes on about he made all these great works and built houses and made gardens and orchard. He was talking about that earlier. And all this kind of stuff. And then he wraps it up in 11. It was just that, it just bothered me. Because I guess he didn't do it right.
well, and I think that's the key. Like my brother, idiot. He's a genius. He's so super smart, and he's so smart. He's convinced himself there's no God, and he fails to realize that his genius is a blessing. He fails to realize. So he's a physician. Yeah, he's a physician. So he makes very good money, especially for rural Oklahoma. He's very prosperous. But it's never enough, because again, it's not a blessing. It's not a gift. It's what have I earned and what more can I have? And
It's vexation of spirit.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, it's a, when you consider the grand scheme of things, so it is a vexation of spirit. On the flip side, as King James says that, or the ESV says that, you know, striving after wind, it doesn't matter what he has.
And
I mean, it's useless. It's pointless that he has all these things. Even if he shared, like, and he has, well, he, you know, he doesn't, like, he has friends over and things like, and most, of course, none of his friends are as wealthy as he is, of course. But he doesn't, like, you wouldn't know that he's very down to earth. But so he's always having people over and, you know, sharing, you know, enjoying his, you know, they have a pool, so they're always doing stuff. Unfortunately, they're never doing stuff in the right manner. But again, it doesn't matter what he has, and it doesn't matter what he shares with anybody else. It in the end, it's not going to mean anything. So that's, yeah, it doesn't, we have to be mindful. And this is one of the things I've gone through recently, as I was dealing with the situation. I had to remind myself that it doesn't matter what God gives us materially, because in the end, God has provided everything that we need, and what we need is salvation. And so if we have material blessings, good, great if we're actually using them appropriately.
Super great.
But I don't have to have material blessings. I told my mom, I said, I'd rather be homeless in a ditch than have my brother's life. And she goes, until it rains. I said, well, when it rains, I'll just go stand on the top side of the ditch. I'm good with that. You know, because I have salvation where he has nothing. It's very sad. So, okay.
so the whole thing is verse 14. We're
Yeah.
gonna bring every work into judgment.
Yes.
The end of the
Well,
chapter.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So, okay, so let's see here. Then it says, in this connection, also read Luke 12, 1-3. Write out verse 21 and put it on the refrigerator this month. If you have a refrigerator and there are leftovers in there, you are one of the ones who is rich. Are you rich toward God?
I eat leftovers
I,
today. So yes, I do. I have
Yeah.
leftovers.
so let's see here. Luke, what was it?
12, 1
12.
30.
I'm not going to read all of it, but I do want to read. And it's sitting on my fridge. I make sure it's there. It is there, but it's tall. It's up here so I can see it, not down here so you can see it. Psalm 21. 12. That's 10. You're about to read the wrong thing again, Jenny. There. 12, 21. So is the one who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God. And again, we all know those people. Some of us have family who are those people. You know, this rich king, you know, it's really sad. The rich fool here, you know. You think about the rich young ruler, as we'll cover, you know, that's a terrible case.
You know, we were talking about that last night, and there was a man at Bigger's church where Gavin was raised, and he always said this. He always said, if the new law, and it's supposed to be more glorious than the old law, it's supposed to be better, you know, than the old law. So if the old law required 10%, then maybe we ought to give more than 10% because it's supposed to be a better thing.
Yes.
You know, he always said that.
So that piggyback, so in Sharon's class last night, as we're going through Hebrews, the tithe was brought up.
Abraham had paid Melchizedek a 10.
And so we had the conversation, and when Sharon's done with it, if you would like it, you may borrow it. But Kyle Butt has a DVD, and he claims, I think there's 5 lessons on there. And Kyle Butt claims that we are under the tithe still. And I know other preachers who teach this. And the first time I heard it, it was a little rough. After I've listened to the lesson, and again, I told Sharon, I'm like, I've got to give you the lesson because I can't tell you the reasoning why. All I know is I was convinced.
I just don't find it anywhere in the New Testament, but I'm gonna watch and see what it says.
So if you would like to borrow the video and figure out, if see what his, it's up to you. But so yeah, but again, the possessions are, God gives us these things. God gave Solomon all kinds of things, and Solomon chose to use them very, very, very poorly, unfortunately. But we can profit from his wise words that he laid down for us, that we do have to give an account to God.
Eventually.
Regularly, and unfortunately we don't even know when that will be. So all right, well, let's call it a night tonight, and we'll start Ahab next week, and hopefully next week we can get through Ahab and the rich young ruler. And
What on that day? Thomas Game?
mm,
First night.
at the 5th.
Sixth, fifth?
I think last night we said next Wednesday was the 4th. The 5th, August 5th. We'll start with Ahab.
Ahab, through what did you say, hopefully?
Well, hopefully we'll get through Ahab and the rich young ruler.
I just got caught up through July today, so.
I've got to finish. Yeah, I'm almost caught up through July.
I got behind again after getting caught up there.